New York at night, the city lights shimmered like diamonds scattered across the water. Inside the quiet halls of the Lancaster Orchid Hotel, where every detail was meticulously crafted to perfection, Harriet Coleman trudged along the marble corridor, her body heavy with exhaustion after a grueling 12-hour shift. She had just finished a grueling 12-hour shift, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but she couldn't forget her final task: inspecting the VIP suite reserved for one of the hotel's most important guests, Damian Lancaster. Damian, a young tech billionaire known for his cold demeanor and sharp decisiveness, was someone Harriet only knew through headlines and news articles. To her, he belonged to a different world, a world of luxury she never imagined she'd touch. But tonight, fate had something unexpected in store. Harriet Coleman was no stranger to hardship. At 27, she carried the weight of caring for her younger brother, Jake, a promising college student. After a car accident took their parents, Harriet became the sole pillar of their small family. Her job at the Lancaster Orchid Hotel was her pride, but it was also the source of relentless pressure. As the head event coordinator, Harriet was responsible for ensuring everything ran flawlessly, from lavish parties to high-profile events for the elite. Though she loved her work, Harriet couldn't deny that it drained nearly all her time and energy. Each day she faced demanding clients, judgmental glances from colleagues, and a growing pile of bills waiting at home. But what kept Harriet going was Jake. Her younger brother, with his optimistic smile and big dreams, was the one thing that gave her strength to push through even the hardest days. Harriet had no time for herself, let alone for daydreams. To her, life was a never-ending list of tasks, and every paycheck she earned was a step toward securing Jake's future. It was late at night, and Harriet felt her legs about to give out after a long day, but she decided to do one final check of Damian Lancaster's VIP suite before ending her shift. This was one of the hotel's most luxurious rooms, where every detail had to be flawless. Harriet stepped into the spacious suite, the soft golden light reflecting off walls adorned with contemporary art. She inspected every corner, from the silk-covered bed to the neatly arranged bottles of expensive wine. But as she sat down on the armchair near the window to rest for a moment, exhaustion quickly overtook her. Within minutes, she fell into a deep sleep, completely forgetting she was in the room of an important guest. Damian Lancaster arrived earlier than expected. As he stepped into the room, he immediately noticed something unusual: the soft, steady sound of breathing. And then he saw her, a young woman curled up on the armchair, her chest rising and falling in rhythm, strands of hair slipping over her face. She looked vulnerable, utterly exhausted, yet strangely peaceful. Instead of annoyance, something unfamiliar stirred in him, a quiet curiosity, a flicker of unexpected warmth. Instead of anger, Damian felt something strange. He stood still for a few seconds, observing her. Perhaps it was the first time he had seen someone who wasn't trying to impress him, someone who looked so natural and genuine. Quietly, Damian took a blanket from the bed and draped it over Harriet. He didn't wake her, choosing instead to sit down on the chair across from her, gazing out at the New York City skyline through the window. That night, something shifted in Damian Lancaster's heart. The next morning, Harriet woke up feeling disoriented. She realized she was still in Damian Lancaster's VIP suite, and what startled her even more was the blanket carefully draped over her. She quickly stood up, adjusted her uniform, and prepared to leave, but the door opened, and Damian walked in. Harriet felt her heart skip a beat. "Good morning," Damian said, his voice calm yet warm. "I hope you had a good rest." Harriet stammered an apology, trying to explain that she hadn't meant to fall asleep, but Damian simply smiled, saying he didn't mind. Instead, he invited her to sit down and have a cup of coffee. From that moment, their conversations began. At first, Harriet kept her distance, feeling uneasy about talking to someone like Damian, a famous billionaire who belonged to a completely different world. But Damian, with his patience and humor, slowly broke down the walls Harriet had built around herself. Their subsequent encounters were no longer accidental. At first, Damian kept his interactions professional, asking Harriet's opinions about hotel arrangements, seeking logistical details. But soon, he found himself lingering in conversations, longer than necessary, slipping in small personal questions. "What's your favorite way to unwind after a long shift?" he had once asked, catching Harriet off guard. Slowly, without either of them realizing, the boundary between formality and familiarity began to blur. He opened up about the pressures of running a massive corporation, the expectations his family placed on him, and the moments of loneliness he rarely admitted to anyone. Harriet, in turn, began to open up as well. She told him about Jake, the struggle she had endured, and her modest dream to one day live a peaceful life, free from financial worries. Damian was drawn to Harriet's authenticity and kindness. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, genuine, unpretentious, and not trying to impress him. And Harriet realized that behind Damian's cold exterior was a warm, vulnerable man longing to be understood. Their relationship gradually deepened, evolving from brief conversations to long evenings where they shared their most intimate thoughts. And in those moments, both of them realized they had found something special, a connection they couldn't deny. The relationship between Harriet and Damian didn't stop at deep conversations. Gradually, they began spending more time together, and it was Harriet who introduced Damian to a world he had never known, a simple yet heartwarming world. One evening, after finishing work, Harriet suggested taking Damian to try New York street food. He hesitated, eyeing the bustling food carts with skepticism. "You actually eat this?" he asked, adjusting the cuffs of his designer coat. Harriet rolled her eyes, playfully nudging him forward. "Come on, Lancaster, live a little." Reluctantly, he took a bite of the hot dog she handed him. The burst of flavors caught him off guard. "It's just not bad," he admitted, making Harriet laugh. And for the first time in a long while, Damian found himself laughing too. Genuine, unguarded laughter under the neon glow of the city. They stopped at a hot dog stand on the street. Harriet laughed as Damian awkwardly held the hot dog, unsure of how to start. "Just take a bite. No need to be too polite," she teased. Damian followed her advice, and immediately a surprised smile appeared on his face. "Not bad at all," he said, making Harriet burst into laughter. Next, she took him to a small donut shop. Harriet shared that this was a place she and Jake used to visit as kids whenever they had enough money to buy a donut. Damian listened to her story, feeling the warmth in her words. He tried a donut, and this time he offered half of it to Harriet. "We should share everything, right?" he said, making Harriet blush. Evenings like these became their routine. Harriet took Damian to places he never thought he'd go. A tiny cafe with live jazz music, a park where they sat on a bench watching people pass by, or a vibrant night market filled with colors and laughter. Damian, who had lived in a world of million-dollar deals and lavish parties, began to realize that happiness wasn't about perfection or luxury. It was in the small moments, like when Harriet's face lit up over a delicious meal, or when she pulled him to run through a sudden rainstorm, both of them soaked but laughing uncontrollably. Harriet also discovered that Damian wasn't just the cold billionaire she had imagined. He had a warm heart, a subtle sense of humor, and a longing to experience the simple joys he had never had the chance to. Their love wasn't built on grand promises, but on small, meaningful gestures. Damian started bringing Harriet coffee every morning, while Harriet left little notes of encouragement on his desk. They didn't need to say it out loud, but both of them knew they had found something special. A beautiful, simple, yet profound love in the bustling heart of New York City. The relationship between Harriet and Damian grew deeper, but not everyone supported their love. Rumors about Damian Lancaster, a famous billionaire, dating a hotel employee, quickly spread through the media and within the Lancaster Corporation. Damian's family, especially his mother, Cassandra Lancaster, was far from pleased. A powerful woman who prioritized the family's reputation and interests above all else. Cassandra saw Harriet as unsuitable for Damian. "You can't be serious about her," Cassandra said during a family meeting. "You're the heir to the Lancaster Corporation. You need someone with status, someone who can support your career, not a girl who works in a hotel." For the first time in years, Damian stood up to his mother. "You don't understand her. Harriet is the only person who makes me feel like myself. I don't care about status or reputation, I just want to be happy." But the pressure didn't just come from his family. The Lancaster Corporation's board of directors also began questioning Damian's professionalism. They worried that his relationship with Harriet could tarnish the company's image. "You need to think carefully," one board member said during a meeting. "Every decision you make affects the shareholders and the company's reputation. A relationship like this could bring unnecessary risks." Damian felt trapped between two worlds. On one side was his genuine love for Harriet, who had brought him joy and peace he had never known. On the other was his responsibility to his family and the corporation, where he had spent his entire life building his legacy. Harriet, too, felt the weight of the pressure. She didn't want to be a burden to Damian, but she couldn't deny her feelings for him. There were nights she lay awake, wondering if their love was strong enough to overcome all these obstacles. Even so, both of them knew they couldn't give up on each other. Damian began finding ways to shield Harriet from criticism, while Harriet worked to prove that she was more than just a hotel employee. But could their love withstand the pressures of family and society? The answer remained uncertain. The pressure from his family and the board of directors continued to mount, pushing Damian into an impossible situation. But he knew that if he didn't stand up for his love, he would lose Harriet forever. One evening, Damian decided to confront his mother, Cassandra Lancaster, directly. In the grand living room of the family estate, the atmosphere grew tense as Damian entered. "Mother, I need to talk to you," Damian began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Cassandra, with her piercing gaze, looked directly at her son. "If this is about that girl, I don't want to hear it. You're damaging the family's reputation and the corporation." Damian took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Mother," Damian's voice was steady, yet his hands clenched at his sides. "For years, I've done everything this family has asked of me. I've built the corporation, attended the galas, played the role of the perfect heir. But for once, I want to choose for myself. Harriet isn't just someone I care about. She's the first person who's ever seen me as more than a name, more than a legacy, and I won't let her go." "You think your happiness is more important than this family?" Cassandra asked, her voice laced with disappointment. "No, Mother, but I believe I deserve to love and live authentically. Harriet isn't a threat. She's the one who's helped me realize that life is more than just work and responsibility. She makes me a better person." Cassandra was silent for a moment, but her expression remained unchanged. "If you choose her, you'll face the consequences. The board won't accept this, and neither will I." Damian didn't waver. "If that's the price I have to pay to protect the woman I love, then I'm willing to pay it." The next day, Damian called a meeting with the board of directors. In the luxurious conference room, the board members sat in rows, their stern gazes fixed on him. "I understand that my relationship with Harriet has caused controversy," Damian began, his voice strong and confident. "But let me make one thing clear. My personal life does not affect my ability to lead. If any of you doubt that, I'm prepared to resign." The room fell silent. Some members looked surprised, while others appeared uneasy. Damian continued, "I've dedicated my entire life to this corporation, but I won't let anyone, not even this board, dictate how I live my life." Finally, one board member spoke up. "We don't want to lose you, Damian, but you need to understand that every action you take has a significant impact on the company." "I understand," Damian replied, "but I won't give up Harriet. If you can't accept that, I'll walk away." Damian's resolve left the board with no room to argue. They knew losing him would be a massive blow to the corporation. As Damian left the meeting, he felt a sense of relief. He knew he had done the right thing, not just for himself, but for Harriet as well. After confronting his family and the board of directors, Damian felt as though a massive weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He knew he was ready to take the next step in his relationship with Harriet. One evening, Damian invited Harriet to a special date. He didn't reveal his plans, only telling her to wear her favorite dress. Harriet, though curious, agreed. Damian took her to a small rooftop garden atop the Lancaster Orchid Hotel. The space was adorned with hundreds of twinkling lights, vibrant fresh flowers, and a small table set up just for the two of them. Harriet couldn't hide her surprise. "Damian, is all of this for me?" she asked, her eyes sparkling. Damian smiled, pulling out a chair for her. "Of course, you deserve all the beauty in the world." The dinner was warm and romantic. Damian shared with Harriet everything he had done to protect their love, and Harriet couldn't hold back her tears as she listened to him. When the dinner ended, Damian stood up, walked over to Harriet, and knelt down. In his hand was a small box containing a sparkling diamond ring. "Harriet," he began, his voice deep and filled with emotion. "You've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You've taught me to love the simple things, to cherish the small moments, and to realize that happiness isn't something distant. I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" Harriet looked at Damian, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't believe that the man before her, a powerful billionaire, could be so genuine and tender. "Yes, I will," she said, her voice trembling. Damian stood, slipping the ring onto Harriet's finger and pulling her into his arms. The twinkling lights around them seemed to bear witness to this sacred moment. That night, under the starry New York sky, Harriet and Damian officially promised each other a future together, no matter the challenges or obstacles ahead. A few months after the proposal, Harriet and Damian held a small, intimate wedding with only their closest friends and family. They chose not to host the extravagant ceremony everyone expected from a famous billionaire. Instead, they opted for a small garden outside New York City, bathed in sunlight and surrounded by wildflowers. Harriet wore a simple yet elegant wedding dress, her hair adorned with a delicate flower crown. Damian, in a sharp suit, couldn't take his eyes off her. As Harriet walked down the aisle, their eyes met and they both smiled, as if the world around them disappeared, leaving only the two of them. Jake, Harriet's younger brother, walked her down the aisle. He beamed with pride, happy to see his sister finally find her happiness. The ceremony was filled with emotion. Damian and Harriet exchanged vows. Not grandiose words, but heartfelt promises. Damian vowed to always protect and love Harriet, no matter what challenges life brought. Harriet, her voice trembling with emotion, promised to always be his partner, his source of strength, and his joy. When they exchanged rings, there wasn't a dry eye among the guests. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a testament to a love that had overcome every obstacle and defied every expectation. After the ceremony, they hosted a small reception featuring their favorite foods, including the street food Harriet had once introduced to Damian. They danced under twinkling lights, laughter and happiness filling the air. Cassandra Lancaster, Damian's mother, was also present at the wedding. Though she had initially opposed their relationship, seeing her son's genuine happiness made her realize the depth of their love. She approached Harriet to offer her congratulations. Though her words were brief, her expression conveyed acceptance. As the evening came to an end, Damian and Harriet stood together, gazing at the starry night sky. Damian took Harriet's hand and softly said, "We did it. This is just the beginning of a new life, and I can't wait to write the rest of our story with you." Harriet smiled, resting her head on Damian's shoulder. "Me too. With you, everything feels perfect." Under the New York sky, they began a new chapter of their lives, one filled with love, understanding, and endless hope.